Okay, hi everyone. We're now on to chapter 10b technically, so this is the last, say, 8 or 9 pages of the novella, and as I said before, we split chapter 10 into 10a and 10b, just because it is such a lengthy chapter. Where we're at in Henry Jekyll's full statement of the case is he's about to explain the lead up to the murder of Sir Danvers Carew, which takes place in chapter 4. So what Jekyll explains is that 2 months before Sir Danvers Carew's murder, Jekyll actually goes to sleep as Henry Jekyll and wakes up as Edward Hyde. He hasn't taken a potion, he hasn't purposefully transformed, he hasn't done anything like that, and he obviously is terrified about the prospect of Hyde soon beginning to take control. So he kind of says to himself that he has to make a decision: I either choose to be Jekyll or I choose to be Hyde. And he makes the decision there and then to stay and remain as Jekyll. So 2 months pass where he does not allow Hyde to come out, he doesn't take any of the potion, he doesn't seem to be transformed at all, and he makes as many efforts as possible to really reject Hyde's advances and stays as Jekyll and prevents Hyde from taking control. However, those 2 months pass and he eventually succumbs to a weakness, and that's one of the first quotes from this section we want to look at. He says, "In an hour of moral weakness, I once again compounded and swallowed the transforming draught." So he purposefully creates it when he becomes quite weak. He's tempted to become Hyde, to just renew that experience and feel it again. And that temptation leads, unfortunately, to the murder of Sir Danvers Carew. Because, and this is his kind of theory behind this, he says, "My devil had long been caged, he came out roaring." So Jekyll kind of theorises that because he had suppressed Hyde for 2 months and he purposefully avoided creating him or letting him come out or even thinking about him, when he did let him out, it was almost like the energy that Hyde had been storing burst. A good analogy, or a simple analogy, would be like pumping helium into a balloon, and the helium goes and goes and goes until finally it will burst, and that burst is violent and dramatic. Well, that's what happens when Hyde is eventually let out to be free again. So his devil comes out, and what happens is he just describes the event of how he, as Hyde, kills Sir Danvers Carew. And the description he gives is another good quote. He says, "I mauled the unresisting body, tasting delight from every blow." So really good word choice there, like for instance, mauled. I mean, that's another animalistic term. It's used to describe a kind of very feverish attack on someone. And then again, this unresisting body. The victim was more or less innocent. I mean, an unresisting body, he's not fighting back, but Hyde is just raining down violent blow after violent blow. So that's the experience of what happened. And Jekyll, once he comes to and realises what has happened, is sick of himself and completely disgusted by what he's able to do. And one other quote which describes this is he says, "My evil finally destroyed the balance of my soul." So the impact of this on Jekyll is, almost completely ruinous to his own sense of self. He does manage to keep, after this, Hyde at bay for some time. He goes out into the world and tries to do good. He's charitable. He talks about all the different things he does in order to try and really show penitence, for what he's done for the murder of Sir Danvers Carew, until he's sitting in a park in Regent Street, and it's described here in 51, and he transforms into Hyde in the middle of the day in a park in Regent Street. And he immediately has to think, well, I can't go back to Jekyll's house because they know who Hyde is, and Hyde is wanted for murder. So that's when he writes the letter to Lanyon and asks Lanyon to go to his house, get the drawer and bring it back. And then when he goes to Lanyon's house and transforms from Hyde into Jekyll, it's because he has to do it there, because he has to get back to his house as Jekyll so that he can't be caught as Hyde for the murder of Sir Danvers Carew. So that gives us a lot of explanation about what happened, what was the reason or the purpose behind transforming in front of Lanyon. It also gives us this clear indication as to him losing control over Hyde because he transforms into Hyde in the middle of the park in the middle of the day. And it's starting to indicate the tip of the balance, as he says, towards the evil side, and the fact that the evil is beginning to take more and more control. We then move on towards really the end of the novella, and we get clear indications that Jekyll, as he's writing this confession, knows that the end is soon for him. And he starts to describe the relationship between Jekyll and Hyde, and how Hyde hates Jekyll because he resents the fact he needs Jekyll to avoid capture, because he can't stay as Hyde forever because he'll be caught by the police. And Jekyll hates Hyde because he realises he's created something that is soon beyond his control. And the two identities really clash and are disgusted by one another, and they can't coincide. And eventually the text finishes with a realisation that he can't create the potion to transform back into Jekyll any longer, because it appears that the first time he created the potion, he used chemicals that were impure unknowingly. So because he used a chemical that had a problem with it, that's part of the reason that the potion actually worked. But now that that chemical is running out of, and he's tried to get a replacement for it, the replacements aren't working because they're actually pure. So because he can't find out what that impurity is, he knows that he won't be able to create any more of the potion to transform himself back into Jekyll when he needs to. So he sees the writing on the wall, and what he actually says is that he's writing this confession by drinking the last of the potion that he knows will work for him. So he's well aware of his impending doom when he's writing this. And then the end of the novella is important. The last quote I would like to read actually is, "Here then, as I lay down the pen and proceed to seal up my confession, I bring the life of that unhappy Henry Jekyll to an end." And Jekyll is writing this in full knowledge that within another half an hour, maybe an hour, he will be transformed into Hyde, because this happens so frequently now, and he'll have ran out of the serum or the potion, the concoction, to transform himself back into Jekyll, and he won't have anything left, and he won't be able to come back as Jekyll at all. Now, we know the events that take place after that, where Hyde is locked in the cabinet and he's getting pulled to, these are all the events from chapter 8, he's getting pulled to try and find the different chemicals, and they can't find it anywhere, until eventually the door is knocked down and Utterson and Poole go in to find the body of Edward Hyde, sorely contorted and still twitching. There are a couple of arguments to be made about how that happens. One is a suggestion that Hyde kills himself because he would rather die by his own hand than the hand of an executioner in front of a humiliating mob of people who would be shouting and screaming at him. The other theory, potential theory, is that Jekyll managed in the last instance to try and push through beyond Hyde's body and take control and commit suicide to prevent Hyde from ever being able to be evil to anyone else. So there's a couple of different theories that I would argue both have weight, and it's up to you to really decide how you see the ending of it suit or fit. That's the whole novella. It's all the way up to chapter 10. We looked at 10A and 10B. And we're going to probably do another video maybe next week, just to give you an idea of some of the key themes, Stevenson's message. What is he trying to tell us about humanity, about society in the Victorian era? Was he influenced by his own experiences? Does he see himself perhaps as a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde? There's lots of different things to maybe tie up this whole text and give you a bit more contextual overview, aside from just the Victorian setting itself. Okay, we'll do that next week. Thanks.